Welcome to RPG Book Club LongCast, the podcast where we play an itty-bitty bit of a biggy big video game and talk about how it makes us feel. I am Sam Ullman.
I am David Bernard Houck.
I'm Maddie Grace Webben.
And today we will be playing Part 5, Episode 4 of Final Fantasy XIII-2, covering all of Episode 4, which is quite beefy.
It was not an itty-bitty bit of a video game. It was a normal amount of a video game.
Yeah, yes. It was normal. I will say I lucked out because I'd already completed a decent chunk of this stuff earlier because of this game's non-linear nature.
Yeah, there's much like in Wind Waker, you get to the 75% mark of the game, and they're like, by the way, if you haven't been doing side quests, go do all of them real quick. So it's just like you kind of grind to a halt and have to do stuff. But Maddie, because she's thorough, had already done those things, and I had not.
Neither had I.
But before we get to all of that, our top 5 of the week is top 5 shitty twists. And
this episode has like 5 shitty twists in it.
It does. And as me and Bernard mentioned in our host chat, shitty does not mean bad in this instance. Like a shitty twist can be brilliant and can be really good.
Shitty twist is a concept that me and Bernard came up in our friendship. It's sort of like a shorthand, like a inside joke, to be clear. So it has a specific meaning.
It doesn't the term shitty twist come from Homestuck?
It comes from Homestuck, yeah. Yeah, so anytime a twist is just really silly or out of left field or seems a little absurd, it's a shitty twist. But sometimes they also, if you think about it a little deeply, might be awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, well, I won't say yet because it might be some of ours. So we will say the game that we are about to spoil, and all of us will agree if we're going to go into it or just like golf clap and say indubitably if we don't want to go into it.
That's right.
If we do go into it, I will put in the show notes, so you can pause right now and check the show notes, all of the games that we mention and approximately how long we talk about them for. Yeah. So if you want to skip to particular things, you can. So, yeah, Bernard, you go ahead and kick us off.
Okay, so I have a list of 10 because I was just thinking of shitty twists. So this is one from my childhood. I haven't played this game since I was like a kid, so I might not remember it clearly, but I remember it really taking me by surprise. Do y'all want to hear the shitty twist in Baten Kaitos?
I would love to hear the shitty twist in Baten Kaitos. I have not played it, but my whole spoiler policy is it's about the journey, not the destination. And sometimes if the destination is fucking wild, it makes the journey that much better to know it in advance. So go ahead.
Okay, if y'all want to hear. So the one neat thing about Baten Kaitos is that your player character is not the main character of the game. The main character of the game is this dude named Callus. And your player character is like a spirit companion to Callus. Like, I forget all the lore stuff, but there are like these spirits in the world. And you're like this spirit companion to Callus. And of course, you control Callus with the controller and everything. But Callus will speak to you and ask you questions, and you have a choice, and he'll like speak to you, and someone will be like, oh, is that a spirit companion you're talking to? And he's like, yeah, introduce yourself. So that's how that works.
Mm-hmm.
So about halfway through the game, I think, it turns out Callus is a bad guy.
Oh.
He's been playing you the whole time.
Oh. That's cool as shit.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they don't really commit to it. And if I recall correctly, Callus comes back to the party and redeems himself and everything. I think it would be cooler if he was just straight up a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
But it still blew my little baby brain.
That sounds really dope. I really love things like that like recontextualize a whole ass
When I was a kid, I came up with an idea for a video game that was the exact same twist, except it was kind of the reverse. It was that you, the player, that was some sort of spirit. was sort of evil. And in the end of the game, the main character breaks free of your control, and the rest of the game is a cutscene.
Sounds like something a teenager would come up with.
But then I mean, like the last hour of the game, like you can't control him anymore because he got free of you. But same, sort of a similar idea.
Yeah. So do you want me to go on?
Yeah, go ahead and get a couple more.
Okay. So have y'all heard of the game The Forgotten City?
Yes.
That's some indie thingy, right?
Yes, it is. So I'll explain what it is. Y'all can decide if y'all want to play it or if y'all want me to spoil it.
I really want to play it, and if I remember correctly, this is a figure things out puzzle game, so I am leaning towards no spoilers.
All right.
Okay, yeah.
But a shout out to that game for its apparently pretty damn good shitty twist.
It's a hilarious shitty twist, but it's really good, and I really like that game.
All right, I want to share one.
Okay, for it.
So here's my shitty twist, and sorry if this is cheating, but it's 3 in 1. Final Fantasies 8, 9, and 15. So in Final Fantasy 7, there is a very, very famous twist. It's really more of a series of like a cavalcade of twists, but there's a whole twist industrial complex involving the main character not being who we or he thinks he is. Unreliable narrator, identity issues, memory loss type shit. A lot of games do this, and FF7 doing it is one reason why so many other games do it. FF8, 9, and 15 also all do this. But they all do it in such a way that it really feels like they just did it because FF7 did it, and they just had to like think of something. And is it okay if I spoil all 3 of them?
Yeah. So
yes.
I've played all of them, and I have.
If you're listening, I promise this will not matter. This doesn't matter, which is the point. It's all that. So in FF8, there's the whole they all grew up in the same orphanage twist. That one's not quite as special because it actually is a pretty good, meaningful twist that matters. It's just weirdly low key. It's just like, wait, that's it. It's not that they're like evil or something. It's just they all grew up in the same orphanage and then forgot about it. That's weird, but it does play in thematically. But 9 and 15 are extra good. 9 and 15 both have very direct, like the main character's backstory has some shocking thing we didn't know about. With FF9, it's about Zidane. I don't even remember what it is. It's like he's some biological experiment.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, the main world you're on of Final Fantasy IX is old school Final Fantasy, and then the moon is new school Final Fantasy. And turns out Zidane is a clone from the moon of the new school sci-fi.
But the point is, though, it's some shenanigans. And FF15, it's not Noctis, but actually Prompto, where it's like, I think it's very similar. You're some kind of bioengineered thing created by the bad guys, so blah, 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 blah. And what makes both of these twists really special to me is that immediately after the twist happens, the rest of the party is like, the main character is like, oh my god, or the character, whether it's Zidane or Prompto, is like, oh my god, I can't believe this about myself. I'm really questioning my identity right now, and also my loyalty to my friends is are they still going to trust me anymore? And in both games, the whole party's just like, bro, no one cares. Who gives a fuck? Let's just go kill the bad guy. And then they just go on. It's really funny, and it's shitty. It doesn't quite count as really a truly bad twist because the game uses the fact that it's stupid and no one really gives a shit as a way of showing that the characters care about each other, you know? But it still does seem like it was there because everyone expects a big twist, but then they managed to have their cake and eat it too by lampshading the fact that the twist doesn't matter.
I'd forgotten about the shitty twist that prompted some sort of biological experiment by the bad guys or something.
It's stupid. And it doesn't matter.
I forget the context of that, but like, were they trying to just biologically engineer the perfect shitty twink? I don't get it.
I don't know.
What biological engineering leads to Prompto?
So Prompto was the prototype for the guy in Stranger in Paradise.
Oh.
So I also had Final Fantasy VIII on my list because it has two shitty twists, so it's super special in that regard. So you have the one we already mentioned of they all grew up in the same orphanage, which is just like weird, whatever. And then it also has the like cool and interesting shitty twist of it being a time loop the whole time and that sort of stuff. And I really like I like both of those, and I don't remember much about the journey of Final Fantasy VIII, but I remember losing my fucking mind when I got to the Disc 4 shitty twist back in the day. I didn't announce it because it was on the previous thing, and so it's going to be in the same set of numbers.
Gotcha.
What were you about to ask Bernard, Manny?
Oh, I was saying Bernard should another one.
Okay, so I have two where I am not going to explain them, but I just want to say, Maddie Grace, remember the shitty twist in Danganronpa V3?
Oh my god.
And I want to say, Sam, remember the shitty twist in Trails in the Sky 1?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Danganronpa V3, one of the greatest shitty twists of all time. It still counts as a shitty twist and not a truly good, like just a normal twist, because it is just outrageously over the top and out of nowhere and fucking silly, but
and brilliant.
It rules very hard after you get over the shock of how very, 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 very bizarre it is.
And I'm not spoiling these because Sam hasn't played Danganronpa V3 and Maddie Grace hasn't played Trails in the Sky, and I want each of them to play those games.
Yeah. Actually, I will say, I would never spoil Danganronpa V3s because, and as Sam always says, the journey is what matters. But part of the journey of Danganronpa V3 is trying to figure out what the big twist is going to be. Because it doesn't come out of nowhere. There's a million clues. So
I actually sort of guessed it.
Yeah, you know there's going to be some huge twist. There's very clearly things aren't adding up in the story, in the game's world. So the journey of trying to figure out what the fuck really is going on is a major part of the journey. And the true nature of the twist is something that I do not think anyone will successfully predict, except for Bernard, who like 50% got it, but not the part that really makes it a truly shitty twist.
Yeah, no, I kind of got it.
Yeah.
I did not get the full scope of it.
I plan on getting back to Danganronpa as my nighttime reading game as soon as I finish the original Ace Attorney trilogy. Bernard started talking super hype about Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, so I put Danganronpa 2 aside to go and play Ace Attorney, and I'm almost done with Ace Attorney 3, and then I'll be back to the Danganronpa grind.
There is a shitty twist in the Great Ace Attorney 2, which I'm not going to spoil, but it's a good shitty twist.
Okay, am I allowed to talk about the shitty twist in Star Ocean 3 Till the End of Time?
I think everyone just knows it at this point.
Yeah, I already know it, so...
Yeah. It is frustrating because... Sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time.
Explain it for those listening who don't know. And again, this is another one where I would say if you haven't played the game, you probably aren't going to care. You should listen to this anyway.
Yeah. So, in Star Ocean 3, you play the whole game just like a normal-ass Star Ocean game, and you're just some dudes from space that land on a non-spacey planet, and you hand-wave away all of your technology, and you go on a JRPG adventure, and everything is great. And then when you're gearing up for the disc change, and you're like, oh, we're about to go fight God, or whatever it is, whatever those vibes are, like let's go and do this. It's weird that we're only at the disc change. You change the disc, and instead of coming out into heaven, you come out into the real world because you were in the Matrix the whole time. And it made me so mad. I haven't actually ever gone back and finished the game. Apparently, if you do finish it, it turns out that like you are somehow like the real world of the other games happened in the real world, not in the Matrix, but it's implied that it happened in the Matrix at the time, which is why I turned it off, because I had liked the first two games. But yeah, you apparently like programs get like AI hologram bodies, and then you go do fight God or whatever the fuck, in the real world afterwards, but it just it's real shitty.
Most fans are this is one of those twists where the general like consensus among the gaming hive mind is like, this ruined the fucking series, which a lot of the time the gaming hive mind is stupid, so I don't know if it did or not. But that is a commonly... Well, no, I think the opinion seems to be this ruined the series, except not really because the plot's not that interesting anyway, but the gameplay is really fun.
Yeah.
So we'll keep playing them.
And it's one of those things where, like, if it didn't matter and they were, like, say the Matrix that they were in, they're actually... Like, all the stuff happened outside of the Matrix in the other games, not in the Matrix. This is the only game in the Matrix. None of the games have taken place after Star Ocean 3 now. So it's like, okay, you say that, but every single game now potentially just takes place in a Matrix, and therefore it's not good or interesting or anything, and I shouldn't care about these characters.
Unlike other video games that are real.
Yes. But yeah, it's such a weird, very shitty, out of left field twist.
That reminds me of one I want to share that wasn't on my list, but now it is. Xenosaga Episode 3. I'm sharing this way.
It was on my list.
I'll go ahead and...
I haven't played it, but it was on my list.
Oh, I'm not sure which twist you're talking about, but I'm going to unilaterally say... I mean, y'all can object, but like seriously, it doesn't matter. In Xenosaga Episode 3, there's this lengthy part of the game, maybe like half the fucking game, frankly, like, or at least a third of it. I mean, it's the third game in the series. We're ramping up to the final climax, right? That means it should all just be plot, plot, plot. What if we all took a time travel trip, just for fun? So a lengthy section of the game, again, might be a good third of the game, involves traveling back in time to one of the most critical moments in the series' entire chronology, right? A moment that has only been discussed up until now. And the only reason you're time traveling, as far as I can tell, is not to, like, change time, but just to, like, see what really happened. You know, it's not, we're going to fix this, it's, oh, we accidentally got transported back in time. So I guess we're just going to go through these events as a way of taking an entire third of the game to just pretty much just do exposition, but I guess make it a little more interactive because you have dungeons and bosses and bad guys and shit. So that's already a little weird. It's like, I really was wanting the momentum of the story to build towards a climax, not like have a weird exposition time travel adventure. But then at the end, it turns out that you hadn't traveled back in time. You were in the Matrix.
Oh, God.
The bad guys had trapped you in a Matrix in order to make you think that you had traveled back in time. And the only reason to do that is because basically Xion, the main character, has magic powers. And when Xion was a child and all these events happened to her, she accidentally lost control of her powers as a child and managed to cause something very bad to happen in reality by like an outsurge, like magical energy. You know what I mean? Like you lose control and something crazy happens. The bad guys just wanted to re-trigger her trauma so that it would happen again.
Wow. So
yeah, it's really dumb. It's weird. And then you're out of the Matrix and you go on with the actual rest of the game, right? But yeah, I mean, like, time travel is such a trope, and being trapped in a hologram is such a fucking trope, and this game substitutes one of them for the other as a twist.
That's crazy. My shitty twist that I knew from Xenosaga was just the fact that you go and meet Jesus of Nazareth.
That's the least shitty twist in the series. It's okay, actually.
I mean, by the time it happens, you're just like, yeah.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. That's the thing. This was the shit.
It'd be weirder if you weren't here.
Yeah, frankly. Since I'll go ahead and share the rest of mine. Xenogears, we've already all played this game. In Xenogears, there's a gazillion twists. Some of them are quite good. But to me, the one that is really shitty is the fact that Graf is your dad. The reason it's shitty is because it's just so obvious, literally from the first scene that he shows up. And, like, don't get you wrong, having a twist that the audience can see coming is okay sometimes. It's called dramatic irony, sweaty, right? But this one, they build it up so much that it really does seem like they think we don't already know. Like, it is so overly dramatized. And it's like, bruh, we know. It's been like 30 hours, man. God, it's stupid.
Do you all want to hear one of the infinity of shitty twists from the Zero Escape games?
Yes.
So I just played the first 2 Zero Escape games because I played the first one, didn't like it, but I was like, I can see real potential here. So I played the second one, didn't like it. And apparently no one likes the third one, so I'm definitely not playing that. But in Zero Escape 2, Virtue's Last Reward, you play as this like 20-something-year-old guy. And like the rest of the cast is voice acted. He's not voice acted because he's the perspective character. We see from his perspective, etc. So throughout the game, there's been some like weird stuff going on. One crazy plot twist that happens is you're on the moon, but you've been unwittingly taking drugs that make time seem weird, which is why you didn't notice that gravity's weird.
Okay.
That's not the twist I'm talking about, even.
Oh, God.
So it turns out there's been some weird time travel stuff going on. And there's been this character that we've been sort of seeing and hearing about for part of the game, who's like this dude in his 60s or 70s. And you probably see where this is going at this point. But at some point, the main character realizes that's him. He looks in the mirror and he's old. And I'm like, couldn't you see your hands? Couldn't you hear your voice? Like, the hands and voice of a 65-year-old dude are different from those of a 25-year-old dude.
Yeah, not being able to see a mirror should not result in you not knowing that you're an old guy.
Didn't your lower back hurt? I don't know.
That's so fucking funny.
That's amazing.
The whole if you like terrible shitty twists, you should play the Zero Escape games because they're nothing but.
In the interest of getting on with it, I would love to hear one more from each of y'all, if that's okay, and then we can move on. Okay. I have one more I'm not going to share it. Also, it might be Bernard's anyway.
Okay, I am assuming that both of y'all are fine with me telling the shitty twist of Kingdom Hearts every game after the first.
Sure, yeah.
Yes.
Borderline no, but in the interest of not being a spoil sport, sure.
So, it might be shitty in the regular shitty way. It might be shitty is just the shitty twist way. But, like, the whole organization, like, everything that happens in Chain of Memories onward is just so not the first game. Like, when you, like, going back and playing through all of them, like, everything every person says has an asterisk on it that gets filled in a later game, because they just go off the rails immediately in those games, and it's amazing. And I found out, like, earlier this week that the developers they said that the original trailer for Kingdom Hearts 2 that's in Kingdom Hearts 1 was not a trailer for Kingdom Hearts 2. They never intended any of that stuff to, like, have any bearing on the regular. Even Riku, that was just some other dude with silvery hair and a blindfold, and they were like, let's just do some stuff in this art style and do a cool ass, like, we got the Advent Children team on board to make us a cool video, let's do that, and then let's just throw a lot of cool, like, text and stuff on there. And then it was super successful. They're like, you're greenlit for Kingdom Hearts 2, and they're like, okay, well, now we have to make Black Cloaks a thing. And now I have to write scripts with all of these words in it. And so the random words that they had just pulled out of a hat that the Advent Children team thought looked cool now became the scripts for Chain of Memories and Kingdom Hearts 2. And that's
so cool. I fully support an artistic process that is based on, okay, we just made a random video of some dudes fighting that was fucking cool, and then later went back and had to actually make a plot based on it.
Yeah, so if if you are a Kingdom Hearts detractor and you think that all of their twists are shitty and the lore is stupid, you can blame it on the Advent Children team, because they made a cool ass fighting video with some two dudes that weren't even Roxas and Riku at the time, which is just great.
So I have two shitty twists that I hadn't mentioned yet because I thought Maddie Grace would want to mention them maybe. But it's the shitty twist at the end of Guns of the Patriots, Metal Gear Solid 4, and how it ties into the shitty twist at the end of Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, which I think is the ultimate shitty twist. The most brilliant, shittiest twist of all.
I would love for you to spoil this for me.
I think we should not spoil the one MGS4, but the MGS5 one, I mean, I always say I don't want to spoil it for people, and I am going to slightly close my door so that my girlfriend doesn't hear me, but I think we should spoil it for y'all. It is incredibly crazy and wild, but it's also like, sure, fuck it, we'll spoil it. Those of y'all who think that Metal Gear series might be something you'd like to play at some point, and they do seem like they're really deep and interesting and complex narratively, you're right, they are, and maybe you might want to skip this part, but Sam, it's fine.
Yeah.
So, Maddie Grace, do you want to explain it, or shall
sure,
I?
I'll do the honors. So MGS5, very important thing about MGS5 is that it is the last game made in the series, and probably always will be. Another thing that's important to know about it is that it is the last game in the what you might call the prequel trilogy. Therefore, it takes place in the middle of the timeline. This is very, very important. Okay, so basically, I'll just start with the twist and then explain what makes it quite so dumb at the end. MGS5 is an open world game. It adopted a lot of Western styles of game design. Instead of being a tight 10 to 20, 25 hour long action game with lots of relatively linear levels and cutscenes, it is an open world game where you do all kinds of missions and have base building, and you send your team on away missions, and it takes 50, 60 hours to play the entire game. At the end, it turns out that you weren't Big Boss all along. You were just some guy who got facial reconstruction surgery done on him to look like Big Boss, and also hypnotized into thinking that he was Big Boss, and Big Boss is just is off doing other stuff the whole time that the game is happening.
Yep.
And the thing is, and this comes at the very end of the game in a cutscene that is just not even addressed elsewhere. Here are a few things that make it brilliant. Here's the first thing. This twist was spoiled in the very first trailer for the game that came out like 4 years before the game ever came out, before it was even clear that the game was going to be split into two different games. In the very first trailer for the game, which came out many, many, many years earlier, there's a part at the very beginning, I think actually, where it is clearly in first person, and the camera is from the point of view of someone laying in a hospital bed, and they look over to their left and they see Kazuhiro Miller, and he's also in a hospital bed, and he's like he says some stuff like, you've been in a coma for 9 years, and then Kazuhiro Miller's eyes shift away from looking at the camera to looking kind of beyond you and go, "Who's that?" Like that happens in the first trailer of the game, an implication that there's like some other guy there. And then every trailer has something that is, in retrospect, pretty fucking obvious. But I legitimately think that Kojima was maybe he's giving too much credit, but you can never know with Kojima, right?
Yeah.
The fact that there was so much time between that trailer dropping and the game coming out meant that there was no possible way you would remember it. And also, the beginning of the game itself has a really obvious tell. But the game's 50 fucking hours long. By the time you get to the end, you forgot that happened. And also, that's stupid. So why would that have been what had happened? But also, what's important is that this was a game that was supposed to finally answer all these burning questions. It takes place right at the center of the game's plot line, and it was going to resolve all these lingering questions. And instead, it's like they just took a bazooka and blew a giant hole into the middle of the game's lore that will never be resolved because it's the final game in the series. And that is why I respect it. And that's what makes it the greatest shitty twist of all time, is the fact that it is thematically the most thematically correct thing for the series to have done.
Also, there is one little thing that they don't actually explicitly address, but I think is hilarious. So the character Big Boss speaks excellent Russian, but for just a gameplay reason, basically, during the game, it wouldn't make sense for him to speak Russian, because you have to capture soldiers.
A major element in the game is that you can't understand the soldiers, so you have to capture them into your army. That way you can have an interpreter. That way you can have more intel. That way you can understand the other languages being spoken in the game. Really cool element of the game's like world-building RPG systems.
That's really cool, actually.
So this character, who's not Big Boss, who's actually called the Phantom in lore, he has like a thing in his head, like some shrapnel in his head that's sort of pressing on his brain. And they make up something. They're like, well, I guess that's pressing on the language center of your brain and making it so you can't speak Russian anymore. And you're like, okay, I'll go with it. But then later, after you've beaten the whole game, you realize, no, the Phantom just doesn't fucking speak Russian. That's it.
Yeah, and I could go on all day about this because there's a million reasons why. I'll say one more thing. The reason they did this in Metal Gear, every single thing has both a lore, like a lore plot, material lore reason. Here's why this happens narratively, and a thematic, like here's what this says about like society. Here's how this plays in with the themes of the series, sort of meaning. But it also almost always has some sort of meta reason involving like involving video game design.
Mm-hmm.
The reason they did this is so that, like in most open world games, you can play a player insert character.
Of course,
you're playing a player created player insert character who has very little dialogue. That way, you get to essentially be the character, like a silent hero, like being the hero in Dragon Quest or Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
But how can you do that with a series where every other game in the series, you've played a very well-defined character with established dialogue? Well, it turns out you were a player insert character who got hypnotized into thinking he was Big Boss. That is one of the many reasons why it is the greatest shitty twist of all time.
Yes.
The one in 4, despite being a lot stupider and bad, honestly, I actually wouldn't want to spoil because it is quite an... MGS4 is a very interesting and strange game.
Yes.
All right.
And who knows, we might not even be talking about the same shitty twist.
It's true.
I'm talking about the one at the very, very, very,
that's
very
the one.
end.
Yeah. That's the shittiest of the twists. The other twists, some of them are kind of good, actually.
Yeah.
Awesome. So then let's talk about the shitty twists in episode 4 of Final Fantasy XIII-2.
Okay, so we got a lot to cover. We probably shouldn't have talked about shitty twists that long.
Oh, well.
Probably not, but it's okay.
As usual, I'm going to have to bail because I've got a date. But anyway, go on.
Ooh. So we select Academia 400 AF from the Historia Crux. What?
Ugh. Academia. Ugh. We hate to see it. I hate how much Academia is in this week.
Anyway, the hot voice says that the Academy is the de facto government, and the city of Academia is their crowning achievement, surpassing any that existed on the Cocoon under the Fal'Cie. This was possible because of Hope's leadership during the Academy's formative years. Science has even progressed to the point where humanity can create artificial Fal'Cie. I'm sure that won't go terribly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Powered by this proto-Fal'Cie, human society flourishes like never before. Sarah and Noel pop out of the time gate in a wild, rain-soaked Blade Runner metropolis. There's even tears and rain while Noel waxes philosophical. But then something scans Sarah, and a bunch of Seath appear. They start attacking everyone.
When this happens, so the hot voice says that everything is great, and then you show up and it's a cyberpunk future. And I turned to Summer, I'm like, I love cyberpunk stories that aren't all like everything is bad dystopias, where they're just like, yeah, we have all this cool technology, and so we just kind of made it better, and things are cool. I'm like, you don't really see that often. Yep. Then it's scanned, and everyone turned to Seath. I'm like, never mind. This isn't one of those.
Yeah, and I will say, Bernard, it is turning people into Seath, not just making them appear.
Okay, I wasn't quite clear on that, but yeah, that makes sense.
It happens really fast.
That's how Seath happen.
Yeah.
But Sarah and Noel run, fighting Seath as they go. And the Seath you fight at this point, they're everywhere, so you can't really avoid them. They give you 1 Christogen point and 0 gil each.
And the battles are insanely fucking easy. And they do give you Seath tears, which are used for crafting and are sell for an okay amount of money when you have like 100 of them. But like, it's really weird how many battles you have here and how you're getting nothing out of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sarah and Noel figure the security system of the city must see them as intruders. They continue fighting Seath and security bots as they flee. They run into who else but Caius. Caius says Noel and Sarah are contradictions in the timeline. 200 years ago, they learned the forbidden history and were entombed in that tower ever since. But now they stand alive before him again. What can that be if not a paradox? Sarah is like, what? Noel is like, I don't know. But he hypothesizes that at some point in their future, all this happens. Caius says he enlisted some assistance and gestures to what appears to be a fal'Cie floating in the sky. We know it's a fal'Cie because we can't tell what it is. More Seath appear, and Caius walks off. They run through the city some more, and Caius appears again and says their very existence poisons the timeline and invites disaster. They chase Caius, who keeps teleporting away. Caius says something about how they learned the true history, and they decide to head 200 years in the past and look for the tower he mentioned so that they can find out what the fuck he's talking about.
I love this part because he's like, yeah, I'm mad because y'all learned the true history in the tower 200 years ago. And they're like, well, we don't know what you're talking about. Let's go to the tower 200 years ago to find out what he's talking about. It's like, buddy, you're just walking straight headlong into a stable time loop. Come on.
Yeah, like the unraveling this stable time loop will be the plot for most of this episode, and they could have done it by just being like, well, that didn't happen, so let's never go to 200 AF in the tower, and boom, we're out of the time loop, and the fal'Cie will just die, and it'll be okay. We can just...
No, because them being in the time loop wasn't part of what allowed the fal'Cie to exist.
True.
The fal'Cie would still
exist. I will say they can't just simply say, oh, we're not going to do that, because that's not how time loops and causality work. I would say that, except that they obviously don't understand that either based on what happens about what you'll hear in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway, they fight through some more Seath, and they see Yule in the distance. They save her from some Seath, but before Noel can say anything to her, a boss Seath appears and owns her. Noel is upset, so they beat the boss, and Noel runs to Yule. The dying Yule says if she were to live, it would bring contradiction to the timeline. Sarah says this is because of them. They're causing a paradox to occur. Because of that, Yule has to... ... Yule says Caius is not here. She tells Noel she's not the Yule he once knew, but thank you. She dies. After a weird cutscene transition, they find an artifact which they say is from Yule? She's showing them the way? They find a time gate. Before stepping in, Noel says Yule saw everything. She knew this would happen, but she didn't try to change her fate. The law of the Farseers says that seers must not change history to save themselves, because if they do, they can doom thousands of others to a worse fate instead. As they step through the gate, Sarah wonders about what Yule said. She said Caius was not there, which Sarah takes broadly to mean he wasn't in the city. Then who was that they met there? And I think taking it broadly to mean he wasn't in the city is sort of like jumping to conclusions, but whatever, she was right. It turns out later.
So it definitely ends up turning out that the Caius we saw wasn't the real Caius. So, like, yeah, she's right, but it definitely seems like the writer had already decided that that was the case, and then forgot to really give her a good reason to know that. Yule says this statement, Yule says, like, one sentence relatively offhandedly, and Sarah is just like, I know, this person is some kind of illusion or imposter or doppelganger, and it's like, well, that's a lot. Like, that's a big jump to assume that someone isn't really that person. Like, that's much more unlikely than a lot of other explanations. Yeah, I felt the same way at this point. I was just like, all right, if you just want to decide. What it really feels like is that the writers of the game, like, whispered in her ear what was actually going on.
Which, to be fair, Sarah appears to have some sort of seeress powers, so maybe she was seeressing and didn't realize it. I don't know. But anyway, we select Augusta Tower 200 AF. The hot voice says this entire tower houses the Academy AI, as well as the Proto-FaLC project. Here too is recorded the forbidden history, although no human survives to remember it. Sarah and Noel pop out in a crazy sci-fi tower, which they hope is the one Caius mentioned. They're locked in a little room, so they snoop around on a computer there. They find out the Proto-FaLC project began in 13 AF under the direction of the Academy. The goal was to re-levitate Cocoon with the power of an artificial FaLC. Alyssa and Hope were behind it. They wonder why Caius took control of the artificial FaLC in academia. The door to the room opens, for no particular reason, so they explore. There are a bunch of people there, but Sarah and Noel agree they seem weird and lifeless. They find a computer with recordings of themselves in different eras. Noel wonders if Caius was watching them from there the whole time, except he thinks the Caius they met in academia seemed different. Not the real Caius. And I'm like, he seemed the same to me. He was saying bullshit about the timeline with Grimoire Weiss's voice. I don't know what else you want. But Noel says they used to spend a lot of time together as the Sirius's guardians, until Caius took off and left Noel and Yule on their own. He couldn't protect her on his own. He wasn't strong enough. Then a portal appeared and took him to Valhalla. He says there's no way Caius would allow Yule to come to harm. Noel says he's missing some of his memories, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing. He can't remember how Yule died. They see Caius and try to follow him, but they need to use a panel to open a path. Mog says the circuits are tangled with another age, Kupo. They figure they need to get a key from another time, and I'm like, seems legit.
Yeah, I noticed roughly around this point this week that, like, everyone is just, like, okay with time travel, and, like, for it to be such a not thing in 13.1, for every single person to just be like, oh yeah, time gates, we knew all about those artifacts, totally 100%, this is all real and normal, things get tangled up with other times all the time, no big deal.
Yeah, one thing that I do think makes it more, I've started to accept it, because in the early parts of the game we were only ever just like 5 AF, 10 AF, 13 AF, like that. But now we're like 400 AF. I'm like, oh, like this is a world in which timey-wimey shit happens all the time. This is 400. Also, I mean, hello, like, academia was founded by Hope and Alyssa, and they knew about timey-wimey shit. So it's just like, yeah, it's like a fundamental shift in the nature of reality has happened. Just like how, you know, us, you know, in the modern era, we think nothing of things like, you know, computers or possible nuclear war with Russia. Whereas, whereas in this world, they're like, yeah, time shit. We all know. We all the time knife. We've all seen it. You know. But I will say this part's interesting because everything that Bernard's about to talk about doing, and in a different time, in a different version of Augusta Tower, I already did all that. And yeah. I think I remember saying something like, yeah, this is either an optional dungeon or like a dungeon you have to do later or something. So basically it's like, the idea of being tangled up in time is honestly unnecessary. They could have just said, we need a key, but we can't get the key. Maybe if we go to this same place at a different time, we'll be able to get this key. Like, now that they can travel through time, it's just like, it's the same. Like, it just so happens that we were able to find a key card for this door, and it's the same door, so hooray, we got the key. You know what I mean?
Because they do that with the same dungeon in reverse. If you get to the top of the 300 tower, it's like, oh, you need the key, but you can't find it here. Go check the 200 version and see if you can find this key, and then come back.
Yeah. So this dungeon's actually 2 dungeons, but I already done one of it, which was cool. Anyway, go on, Bernard.
So, Noel and Sarah return to the Historia Crux and select Augusta Tower 300 AF, 100 years after where they just were. The hot voice says the network system was attacked from the future, and the AI ran amok, taking control of much of the Academy. Seems bad. As Noel and Sarah enter Augusta Tower, a robotic voice says the 2 entities from different times cannot coexist. If this were to occur, history would be infused with contradictions. This would lead to a distortion causing the entire world to collapse. Seems bad. The subjects require further analysis. Hypothesis. Their existence has initiated a distortion in history, and the entities are a living paradox. I took all that down thinking it would end up being important.
Here's something cool. I didn't get that cutscene because presumably I went there earlier in the game where it quote wouldn't have made sense, end quote. So the game knew that there was no reason to show it to me. That's cool.
So Sarah checks the computer and gleans all the stuff the hot voice told us about the tower being hacked from the future. It seems in this episode like Sarah is really good with computers and that this just hasn't been mentioned before. Like, she's able to tell it's being hacked. She's able to tell the hacker isn't here. She's able to tell it seems to be being hacked from the future.
And there are some other lines in this game that are like one-off lines, either in like the data log or NPCs, that imply that that this is actually a thing about her. It's not just out of nowhere. But also B, most people from Cocoon tend to be very tech literate. So she's only tech savvy really in comparison with Noel.
That makes sense.
So she's just like, yeah, duh, computers. We all know about computers.
We've all seen them.
We've all like she just probably just like most people in Cocoon like took a few comp sci courses in college or something like that. I think like that's not said, but there are a few lines that say that like this is not a particularly unusual skill for her to have.
Okay, that makes sense.
I am an IT guy. I'm really good at computers. I can build computers. I can build networks. I don't think I would be able to even look at a computer from 400 years in the future and be able to tell that people are hacking it from 500 years in the future. I don't think I could do that.
Okay, but you didn't take a class in temporal programmology.
Oh dear. Sarah majored in that shit.
Yeah.
So they decide to investigate the tower and find the key. They investigate, and at some point they just like, you just click on a computer and they apparently stop the hacking with no fanfare, and it's weird. Anyway, they wonder who did this and why. The robotic voice, at least in my timeline, says, analysis complete. Due to actions taken by the subjects, a possible future has been deleted from the timeline. The subjects pose a serious threat. For the security of future operations, precautionary countermeasures are being initiated. Subjects will be eliminated. Having resolved this paradox, they find the key. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's how that works. They leave without incident. No one tries to eliminate them just yet. We return to Augusta Tower 200 AF. Noel and Sarah unlock the panel or whatever it was and see Alyssa in the distance. They run up to her to find out what she's doing there and what's going on. This Alyssa speaks all weird and notes that it appears they are, quote, acquainted with the original, unquote. She explains that she is a duplicate of the Alyssa Zidell entity. She says she is a fabricated life form, a living machine. She says everyone who works in here, She says that everyone who works here is a duplicate. They take this in stride and ask if she's seen anyone, like, say, some extremely anime-looking dude called Caius. She says the Caius entity came through recently, accompanied by a green-eyed girl. They were headed to the top of the tower. Noel recalls that Caius said they were entombed here. That might be the true timeline, and Yule might be here to make it happen. They ask Alyssa's duplicate to take them to the top floor so they can ask Caius what's up. On the elevator, things get weird, and they see a vision of Hope and Alyssa getting owned by some robots. Alyssa's duplicate disappears, and baddies attack. Alyssa's duplicate shows back up after the fight and says this was an effect of the paradox. They just witnessed events that took place here 187 years ago. Alyssa's duplicate confirms that Alyssa and Hope were murdered. She says that after the Proto-FaLC project, artificial intelligence and humans came into conflict, so the AI murdered them. More baddies appear. After fighting them off, Noel and Sarah realize that AI took over the academy and, quote, the broken FaLC was made by a broken artificial intelligence, unquote. Humans were betrayed, then wiped out. The duplicates were mechanical puppets built to hide what happened. More monsters attack on this very long elevator ride.
This whole tower has like Halo 1, the library energy.
Yes, except there's too much color.
True.
Yes.
After the fight, the duplicate says they have seen the forbidden history and that those who know too much must be buried. The elevator stops, trapping them. And at this point, I wonder, you could have just not told them about the duplicates. When they asked you to take them to the top floor, you could have said no.
Yeah, it's like I could tell you. It's like she said, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. But she forgot to say that. So, like, can you tell us? And she's like, well, I will have to kill you, but sure. I could possibly chalk this up to, like, she's an artificial creation, so she might have some kind of programming where she has to tell people who visit the lore, because she's like an infobot. But then she's like, oh, but I also have to kill you because I'm an infobot, but I also have a subroutine that makes it where no one can learn this information and leave. I don't know. I want to bring something up earlier, which is...
Or it could just be that she figures they're here, they're going to figure it out.
Right, so that's a good point. Yeah, like what else would they be here for? Yeah, fight them on your terms. I will say, earlier, when you first learned that she's, like, artificial, what exactly happens is she's talking to us, and then she says something a little weird, and then she, like, digitizes and teleports away, and Sarah's response is, oh, she must be an artificially created creature. And I'm like, no, that's what holograms do. That's not what robots do. That's what holograms do. She's like, oh, it turned into digital Digimon code and teleported away. You know, like a robot does. Whatever.
Oh, this is 400 or 200 AF.
It's like she knows that she's in Blade Runner 2049, but she got mixed up what kind of non-human she was, whether she was the AI girl or the robot guy.
Anyway, they're trapped in the elevator, and in Caius' memory, the next thing that happens is their death. They're determined to escape the situation. They do so, and it's not even hard.
That's the part that I was alluding to earlier, when I was like, when you're trapped in a time loop of, like, causality and predetermination, you can't just be like, okay, but let's not, though. Let's just not.
Yeah.
It's like, but no, but you already did. That's why you're here, because it already happened. You can't just decide that it doesn't happen, actually. But they do.
They have the power of Etro and anime on their side. They can do it.
That's right.
So while they're escaping the situation, they read a computer, and some UI tells us, in the decade following the commencement of the Proto-FaLC project, a conflict arose in the Academy between the AI construct and its human creators. The construct insisted that the Proto-FaLC be imbued with the full powers of a FaLC, but the scientists countered with the argument that the more dangerous combat functions were unnecessary. With no compromise forthcoming, the project faced termination. In 13AF, the project director, Hope Estime, was assassinated, and the debate died with him. The Proto-FaLC was eventually created with the fully functional ability to change humans into l'Cie or Seath. And I'm like, did you forget to make a cutscene that explains those details, or what?
Yeah, I loved this part because at first I was like, yeah, y'all are just using it for its floaty powers. Why would you build in all of the other stuff? Like, you don't need that. But then I thought about the real world, and I'm like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that, like, oh, to keep this one good thing, we have to make sure that all of the bad shit happens too.
I actually really like this subplot because it's like, first of all, it's very Homestuck. It's literally an evil creature from the future going back in time to ensure that it gets created. Like, it turns out that's... Did you just say that, or is it the next cutscene? It's hard to get mixed up what you did and didn't say because there's so many things that it's just confusing plot.
Yeah, we don't know yet that it goes back in time to ensure its own creation.
Okay, so whatever. Later, we're going to find out that, it's the FaLC itself is the one hacking the robots from 13AF to make them think that they should create a FaLC, which is a cool stable time loop. But yeah, it's just like Hope is like, hey, what if we made a FaLC that could do all the levitating stuff but not murder all the humans? And the AIs are like, okay, but I kind of like the murdering all humans part, though. Can't we also give it that part?
And at this point, they don't turn off the AI.
Yeah.
I would unplug it.
Yeah, if I were Hope having a conversation with Siri, and Siri was like, "No, let's keep the part where I can kill humans." Yeah. Okay, well that was a failure. Let's try Cortana, see what she says, and we'll make our way down the list of AI.
Like, you wake up in the morning and you're like, Siri, play some music on Spotify, and Siri's like, playing music on Spotify. By the way, would you like to download the update where I can electrocute you to death? I really think you should. I'd be like, Actually, okay, if Siri was like, no, really, like, it's just you got to have the new update or you can't get all the games, I'd be like, it's probably fine.
He's not going to actually electrocute me.
You forget we're in technical an update to agree to these terms and conditions, and you'd be like, yeah.
Yep.
I didn't read it. No, here's what it would be. If Apple is like, the latest iPhone, it does have an AI that can murder you anytime it wants to, but we did put back the headphone check. I'd be like, ooh. Yeah, okay.
Yep. I think we all would. Anyway, Sarah and Noel continue through the tower. They wonder if Caius or someone else is behind this, or if it's just the AI itself causing everything. They decide to find the AI mainframe to find the answers. So shit's real. They're looking for the mainframe. They get to the top of the tower and find Yule alone. She's like, here's an artifact. And they're like, thanks. She says she saw Sarah in Erba and trusts her. Sarah and Noel must protect the timeline. Sarah notes that this is the same year when they saw her in Erba, so this is the same Yule. Sarah asks her what her deal is.
Did the Yule in Erba die too? I could have sworn that Yule died every time we've met her so far.
I'm pretty sure Caius opened some gate thing and he and Yule stepped through it.
Yeah, that's what usually happens. Usually they just walk off. And that's the one reason
Yule
why
does die all the fucking time, but I don't think she did in that scene.
That's the reason why they're like, oh, the Caius in Academia was bad. They're like, oh, he's bad, so he must have been different. It's like, buddy, he's always bad. But the difference is that he intentionally murdered Yule. That's the one thing they have to go on that seems out of character for him. Other than that, it's like just being evil. He's just being a little more evil than usual because he sacrificed Yule.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense that, Yule got killed and he wasn't there trying to stop it. It makes sense. The other time she's just dropped dead and he's been like, well, fuck.
I wasn't astute enough to think about that, but these characters actually were paying attention, so.
Yeah. So Yule says she's the seeress of the oldest tribe on Pulse. Her visions of the future are recorded and stored in the Oracle Drive, but that is long in the past. There is no more need to record the prophecies. She has Caius now. He is tasked with protecting the seeress and remembering her visions. He will remember the entire timeline. He is beyond death. He can't fucking die. The Cirrus possesses the eyes of Etro. Inside Caius beats the heart of Chaos. We have to kill Chaos.
You have to kill Chaos.
Let's go chaos.
The goddess has gifted him the curse of eternity. Sarah asks why she's trying to help them, seeing as they're trying to change history, and that doesn't really seem like Yule's thing. Yule says history has already been broken. The timeline had been distorted already, leading to a future of death and destruction. If they change the future, they can change the past and correct the distortions. The miracle that saved Cocoon was already altered, which is why lightning disappeared. This happened because the future was changed. If they change the future again, the past can be restored and the timeline can be corrected. Sarah is relieved to hear they've been doing the right thing. Noel asks Yule if she knows who's been laying traps for them in the tower. She says, it's the machine. It's sentient, and it has generated the contradictions that threaten them. She confirms that Caius in academia was a duplicate. The one they saw in the tower, however, was real. He brought her here, and when they are finished, will take her away. Sarah and Noel kind of abruptly decide it's time to go. They step into the gate that's been here the whole time. Yule has a vision of everyone smiling, the future she wanted to see. Then she falls dead. Caius picks her up. He says, I will remember your pain. It will be carved in my heart, together with the memories of every other Yule, cursed to die this way. The gate they step...
Expositionally.
Caius seems like the type of guy who would talk to himself like this, so I buy it.
Yeah.
The gate they stepped into was a special one, which takes them into a virtual world inside the AI or something. I don't know. Some UI explained this earlier when they checked a computer, and I didn't take it down because I didn't care.
I don't know why it couldn't have just been the top floor of the tower, but yeah, it said whatever, who cares?
The Proto-Fal'Cie appears. It's the one behind the attack on Academia, and the one who's been trying to kill them in the tower. They fight. It's a very easy fight.
Mm-hmm.
It also both looks and mechanically is similar to the fight with
Anima in the first game.
Well, no, I was going to say like Balthazar or something, like the final boss guy.
Bartandalus,
yeah. Because it's got a big face with two hands on either side.
But the two manipulators that you destroy to be able to attack the inside Anima, the first boss of Final Fantasy XIII was.
Well, guess what? I don't remember that. Checkmate.
Boom roasted.
Also, it makes there's a lot of good thematic resonance if it's Bartandalus, so I'm going to pretend you didn't say that.
All right. Sarah, Noel, and Mog realize this place must be like the void beyond, between times or something. The Proto-Fal'Cie must have used this place to travel through time and infiltrate the AI. Then it killed the humans in the tower and made them make it. It caused its own creation, which is a paradox. The Proto-Fal'Cie was trying to protect the distortion that gave birth to it. But the Proto-Fal'Cie reappears. Because it can go back in time and rebuild itself, they can't defeat it as long as the Crossroads exists. You'd think that means they need to destroy the Crossroads, but no. Sarah defeats it by yelling at Hope across time and space that these machines are driving her nuts. After that actually works, the Proto-Fal'Cie disappears, and Sarah has a vision of Caius killing her and Noel. Then they both get up and head back to the Historia Crux. Academia... Yes?
I think... so, Maddie called out this, lore...
Yeah.
Earlier than I would have got it, that it's that prophecies are what change the future, change the past. If you change the future, they see it as a different prophecy in the past and act accordingly, which is super duper cool. This is the big reveal of that, but it also looks like the joke answer, and I feel like the game was tricking us.
I thought it was the joke answer.
I was going to talk about this memorable moments. Yeah, they give you 4 answers. 2 of them seem really reasonable. One of them is like, obviously not going to work. And one of them is a joke answer, which is scream at Hope. But that's the correct answer.
And she doesn't do it because she thinks it'll work. She does it because she's mad. She literally is just like, oh, I'm so sick of this. God damn it, Hope, you fucking asshole guy from 300 years ago. Why did you put us in this stupid situation? And then it turns out that worked for reasons that actually make a lot of sense. Yeah, as will be explained in a second, Hope, in like 10 AF, saw that and was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't build a proto-Fal'Cie.
We went through all the trouble of getting rid of the Fal'Cie, you guys. It was hard.
It was very hard.
It fucking
a lot of people died.
So anyway, Academia 400 XTX AF is unlocked. The hot voice says the proto-Fal'Cie is no more, and never was, I guess. And in the sky floats the 13th arc. However, the day when Cocoon is prophesied to fall is drawing closer. The Academy has put into motion an ambitious project to avert the catastrophe. So Sarah and Noel pop out, but now it's sunny, so you know it's not bad. Hope and Alyssa, who are apparently real this time, walk up and welcome them to the future they saved. They tell them to come by the Academy's head office and leave without any further explanation. It would take like 5 seconds for them to explain why they're here in the future, but they don't just yet.
Or they walk with us. Like, just have a walk and talk, man.
Yeah, it's
but
like not even that far.
They need to let us explore this unimaginably big city.
It's a really big city.
For those of y'all who want to catch up, I'll go ahead and say something. The map tells you that this city has like 18 fucking artifacts in it or something, and artifacts are the reward for side quests. So you might be thinking, I should talk to every single NPC in this entire confusing labyrinthine city to find out which of them gives me side quests. I'll go ahead and spoil it. The answer is 0 of them. A lot of the dialogue is actually really good. I'm glad I explored this whole city. I really liked doing it. But I will say, if you're doing it because you want to get some side quests, don't bother, because none of them give you side quests.
I was walking around the city and I found it interesting how mundane and asinine most of the dialogue was.
Well, yes, but I really love it. You get a lot of interesting world building too.
Yeah. Did you get the person who is like, wow, you must be freaked out to see guns. They didn't have those back where you're from.
Yes! They're like, yeah. Oh, because they just think the old timey was so primitive, we didn't have guns. It's like, buddy, we had a lot of guns.
We had a guy in our party with 2 guns.
Yeah. I mean, one of the main themes here is that people in 400 AF are very ignorant of the past, which, like, I wouldn't even call that cultural criticism. That's not even a criticism. Like, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. People being ignorant of the past is a big problem. But when I say that, I mean, like, people not knowing that Russia isn't communist. I don't mean people not knowing about...
Which isn't even long ago. These people would have seen it on TV.
Yeah, when people are ignorant of things in the last 50 to 100 years, that actually is a problem. But when you're ignorant of things 400 years ago, it's just like, well, no, duh, that's just how history works. So it's just like, no, very few people actually know what the fuck was going on at the time when we were starting this game.
Yeah. So Noel and Sarah go to the head office and meet with Hope and Alyssa. Hope now explains that he invented a machine called a time capsule that slows down time for its occupants, which is how he and Alyssa got there. But obviously they can't go back. In 13 AF, he started the Proto-Fal'Cie project in order to levitate Cocoon. But then he saw a prophecy in the Oracle Drive of Sarah fighting the Proto-Fal'Cie and yelling at him. So they abandoned the project. They decided they needed to levitate Cocoon using only human technology, no Fal'Cie. And I'm like, technically the Proto-Fal'Cie was human technology, but whatever.
I think the idea is that the human technology was like tapping into actual like magic lore energy.
Yeah, probably. Hope says that he and Alyssa came to this time period to observe the 13th arc, which was prophesied to appear during this time. They wanted to find out what makes it float so they can use that on the project to re-levitate Cocoon. At this point, he's like, we're planning to make a whole new Cocoon since the old one can only be powered by Fal'Cie. And it really is stated like building a new cocoon is the solution to the old cocoon falling, and I'm very confused for a while until it turns out these are two separate, unrelated projects.
Yes.
I actually didn't realize that. I definitely thought that they were going to levitate the new cocoon and presumably, I don't know, shoot the old one with a bunch of missiles so that it blows up or something.
Yeah, I don't know. They are trying to levitate the new cocoon, but I don't know what they're doing about the old cocoon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why do you even need a new cocoon? There's plenty of room on Grand Pulse.
That's my big question, is why do you even need that? But if you take it as a given that they need it, I mean, Pulse is full of really dangerous monsters and still seems to be so, whereas Cocoon was like a amazing paradise. So it's like, hey, what if we could have that paradise without the like horrible oppressive system, authoritarian system that undergirded it? Which makes sense. I actually really love what's going on here. I think there's a lot of really deep, meaningful stuff going on thematically, but it only makes sense if you take just as a given the fact that they should be making a new Cocoon. I have no idea why they want to do it.
Yeah.
Alyssa explains that the ARC's reactor is powered by an ore cluster called a graviton core. By collecting these, they could get the new cocoon in the sky. However, they can't find any graviton cores. Sarah and Noel offer to help because, quote, if there's one thing we're good at, it's looking for weird objects, unquote. Turns out the graviton cores are spread throughout the timeline, of fucking course, so we've got to do a bunch of time hopping to find them.
I already had two of them.
I had two as well.
And earlier, Sam mentioned that you got to do a bunch of side quests. Actually, very few of them actually are, or even maybe zero, are the result of side quests, which is to say, you just find them. They're just hanging around. However, sometimes in order to get to where they are hanging around, you have to do a side quest. But the reason I mention that is because it's possible to like do the whole side quest and then also not notice that there's a thing there, which is what I did twice this week.
Yeah, the Power Ranger Flan side quest only exists to give you that graviton core, but you still have to think to look for it at the ending spot.
That's one of the ones where I forgot. After I finished, I was like, wait, I never actually got the thing.
I didn't have any, so I just followed a guide, and there are 5 of them that you can just get by just walking up and grabbing them. Yeah. So I got those 5.
That you have. I really respect that there are 7 of them that exist, and you only have to get 5. That's really, really nice design, actually.
Yeah,
and it's not like, there's no like convoluted plot explanation. It's just like we only need 5. There just happened to be 7. We did. There's probably more than 7. This is a thing that exists in the universe for probably many of them. Turns out we just only need 5 of them. Why would we happen to need the exact number that we were able to detect? That would be more contrived, actually. I liked it.
So after we get back, Hope tells us the Academy is working on a weapon that's powered by paradox energy or some shit. They need a chaos crystal, a solidified chunk of paradox energy. But of course, it doesn't exist in this time period. He says that once Noel and Sarah find a chaos crystal, he can build them a prototype. Anyway, we've given them all the graviton cores, but it will still take a century to finish the new cocoon. And if the old cocoon falls before then, that's still a problem. Alyssa gives Noel and Sarah an artifact they can use on a gate in town. Cool. They presume this will lead to the day cocoon collapses where Caius was fighting in the prophecies. Is this the final showdown? Probably not. As they leave, Noel has more trouble remembering his past. Sarah wonders if it has anything to do with the future changing. Probably so. They get to the gate and seem convinced Caius is on the other side. We're given a chance to chicken out and prepare more before stepping in. And this is like right near the end of the chapter, so I chickened out and didn't step in.
Yeah, we could just stop there. If you do step in, one very shocking cutscene happens, and then we save and quit.
Yeah, it's just one shocking cutscene, but it's definitely a cliffhanger. Then, I think it makes sense for us to leave the shocking cutscene for next time and just say, problem solved, on to our next adventure, where nothing bad will happen. Yes.
Everything will go according to plan.
I do want to confirm, as Sam said, this is a point of no return for at least quite a while. If the game opens back up before technically the end, obviously it's got New Game Plus, but if it opens up before the end, it's definitely not for a while. And that shocking cutscene makes very clear why. There's a significant change where you're like, oh yeah, you can't keep playing the game like normal after this. Be aware of that. I went and did a bunch of side quests at this point because the game opens up a fuck ton. So if you want to do that, then go do that.
All right.
So yeah, let's listen to some more music and talk about some more memorable moments. Maddie, you said you had a whole bunch, so tell me your whole bunch.
Well, annoyingly, my Xbox sleep because it had been a while, so I got to open it back up to get the screenshots. But while I'm loading them, I want to say I really love this week. I've started for a while. I was like, what is the plot of this game? Like, what is this game about? And I finally figured out what it's about. And now that I figured it out, I really like it. The game, yeah, there's some kind of plot involving Caius and the time stream, but I've realized that's really not important. Like, the plot is basically about Hope and Alyssa and the rest of the citizens of this society trying to build a better world over the course of centuries. And every little subplot so far that has seemed like an unimportant subplot isn't a subplot, it's the main plot. These are all the struggles, the pitfalls that entail trying to do that. Like, oh no, the Flans are trying to destroy the pillar. Oh no, we accidentally recreated the horrendous
the first game.
Evil god from the first game. We accidentally reproduced a dangerous societal structure that we thought we'd overcome, and now it is threatening to rear its ugly head again in its dying throes. Like, there's a lot going on with it, and weirdly enough, it reminded me of a very intellectually sophisticated and deep and meaningful science fiction book called Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson, which is about a group of people who go and colonize Mars, and it takes place over the course of hundreds of years, and it also does involve main characters who basically go into cryosleep so that the book can have a time skip of 100 years, and then they wake back up and you have the same characters sort of trying to oversee the process of society. So that's very similar to what's happening here, right? Actually, I said the previous game was very deeply political, and this one is too, but in a completely different way. It's a villainless... I know Caius has something going on, but I don't really give a shit. It's a villainless narrative about a society that is basically free of sort of a systemic oppressive problem, and now is trying to figure out, well, okay, what the fuck do we do now? How do we make a functioning society at this point? And you just get to see it happen. It's really, really cool, and I actually find it very meaningful. Anyway, here's a nice little exchange in one cutscene. Ahem.
Actually, I had things to say about what you just said to riff off of that real quick. I really like this game because, like, so many games, most of them Final Fantasy games, you like save the world by breaking it down to its bare bones in the final cutscene, and then you just are like, and we all live happily ever after. We're not going to answer how we came across the systemic change to not do that again. And this game is like, how did they survive in a world where Cocoon fell down to the ground? Very carefully, over 500 years. And they did a little bit at a time. And so the reason this is a time travel story more than anything is the interesting questions that they had to answer post Final Fantasy XIII were all, how do the people keep going? And I feel from that, like, well, you can't just do that tomorrow. You have to do that over 500 years. So let's bring in some timey-wimey bullshit so that we have an excuse to time travel to answer those interesting questions.
And like,
certainly works better than trying to do a, say, short story that's a minute-by-minute account of what happens after the end of the first game.
Exactly. And and I said in a tweet thread today, I said it's an exploration of the chaos of history, basically. And like, I said the vast unpredictability of historical time. So anyway, here's an exchange. When we get to good academia, Sarah says, and this is part of a larger cutscene, but I got a couple of screenshots. Sarah says, they're like, wow, how could such a place like this exist? And Sarah says, it probably took a lot of people working together over decades, maybe even centuries, to make this city what it is now. Which is pretty obvious in how cities work. But then Noel says, I used to think the only way to make a better future was to change something right away in the here and now. But creating something for people to build on, that's not a bad idea. And then he says, even if it can't be completed in one lifetime, it's still worth starting. That's just a really powerful theme, and that is the theme of the it's one of those things where the characters are just going to tell you what the story's about. It rules. Big ups to this game.
I have one. I have just one. Do you want me to go, or Maddie Grace, do you have more?
Oh, no. I got some more, but yeah, you do some.
Okay, so I stumbled upon some NPC dialogue that absolutely baffled me in one way, and then I realized what it meant, and it sort of baffled me in another way. So I was running around Good Academia, and I talked to this little girl, and she said, there's a TV show I watch with my dad all the time.
Yes, this one. Oh, I love it. Go on.
It has a really funny policeman in it. He has really bad luck and always has to shoot his way out of scary situations using his 2 trusty pistols. His hair is like a bird's nest, and he always says sugar and rainbows. And at first I was like, what the fuck does this mean? Is this a reference to something? Then, so I Googled Final Fantasy XIII, Sugar and Rainbows, and I was reminded of the one time Saz said, you think you'll die and everything will be sugar and rainbows. And I'm like, oh, this is a reference to Saz. He has his 2 trusty pistols. He's not a policeman. He's a pilot. And then I'm like, little girl, calling a black man's hair like a bird's nest is kind of problematic, I think.
He's an actor, is what I'm pretty sure is being said here.
Oh.
He's become an actor.
I can't see Saz as an actor. I don't think.
Me neither.
I also like the idea that as an actor, he also has 2 guns. Like, he just is being himself. Also, there is actually I believe there's a second reference to a different TV show or movie that Saz acts in as well, though I don't remember what it is.
Maybe Saz can act. I don't know.
So I'm pretty sure that is what's being stated here, is that Saz is now an actor and is in beloved television shows, which honestly, he's so charming. I could see that. He might not be a good actor, but he's definitely a charmer.
He is charming. Yeah. That baffled me until I realized what it meant. I was so confused about how specific and weird it was.
Here's a good one. When you're in the good future, God damn it, I keep accidentally pressing a button. Anyway, when you're in the good future, someone makes a reference to director XIII, and then a second later they're like, wait a second, we're not supposed to call him Director XIII, we're supposed to call him Mr. XIII. And then he says the reason is that the people in the academy prefer if we don't praise individuals. They don't want us to treat anyone like some sort of deity, like with the FFXIII, which is really, really cool. Again, it reminds me of utopian socialists or anarchist literature, right? Where it's just like, oh yeah, this is some society in the future where we all make sure that no one ever, gets to put on a pedestal over anyone else because we're not trying to recreate these oppressive structures and blah, 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 blah. I don't really believe that kind of thing, but yeah, it's really good.
I have one that is more of this game being nonlinear and solving its nonlinearity with writing and game design, which is super cool. So when I got to the computer that was tangled up with a different timeline, the only hint it gives you is you have to go somewhere using a wild artifact. And the place we had just come from had so bad future has a gate that's locked with a wild artifact. So I'm like, obviously that's where I go. So I went through there and did the whole Power Ranger Flan side quest, which is super simple. There's a bunch of different colored flan, and you go around and you find their missing babies using Moogle Hunt, and you find them all for them. You turn it in, but at the end of it,
super cute.
At the end of it, how you solve it is because after you save all the little ones, they're like, okay, back to what we're doing, which is eating Fang and Vanille. We're like, oh shit, yeah, we're not supposed to be helping the fucking Flan in Sunlit Waterscape. This is a bad idea. So you get into fights with them and it's not really working. So Sarah solves it by putting on her teacher voice and puts them all in timeout. And it works. And Mog can talk to him. They're like, yeah, they say that you're really scary and they thought that you were sweet, but they don't ever want to see your scary side again. So they're going to leave the tower alone.
It's so cute.
It's so cute and it's so great. And then it ties in to, because of the nonlinearity of this game, since I had already done that one, it ties in when she yells at Hope is more of the same thing of her like giving up and giving Hope a scolding, and so it felt like I knew that it was a side quest because I got to the end of it and there was no gate, there was nothing. It was just an artifact that I didn't notice there, but it was like, oh, that obviously wasn't where I was supposed to go, but it felt like it was where I was supposed to go because of the writing and stuff of the game, and I thought that was really freaking cool.
I want to share one more thing, and then I do have to go. Okay. So, I'm gonna yell about Brain Blast maybe next time. Brain Blast is a quiz game you can do that is stupid. However. Due to some of these questions, the questions contain some very interesting lore. For example, let's see, where are the ones that I screenshotted? Really? These are the ones I screenshotted? These aren't that good. Here we go. Stage actor John Barker is a less than handsome man who's always late for rehearsals. What flimsy excuse does he use as a reason for his tardiness? And the answer is, an Ochu was flirting with me. So again, just some random piece of media that exists. This one's really funny. An airline providing flights between Cocoon and Grand Pulse came up with a special offer that proved disastrous because of its name. What was its name? And this one, instead of just guessing like you do for most of these fucking quiz answers, this one, if you think about it, you can correctly guess. It was the advertising slogan they came up with that they thought would be a good advertisement for their airline that they didn't realize was very in ill taste was smile and say purge.
What?
That shit happens in real life, you know?
It really does.
I mean, Burger King did tweet on International Women's Day, women belong in the kitchen, so.
Exactly. It's that kind of thing. I'm like, that's really funny. They're showing that, like, this fantasy world, like, their advertising companies will make the same silly blunders that, like, the ones in real life makes. It's very goofy. Also, from One in PC, we learn that duplicates, and they use the exact same word, duplicates, that they used in the big tower area, so it's the same concept, it's the same word, are now just very common things that people own as, like, maids and stuff like that. Doesn't seem to be causing any problems, though I do think it's a little troubling, and could potentially cause problems. But it seems like, nope, people just buy these, robotic duplicates, and they're all fine. Oh, also, later you meet a duplicate that looks just like Lightning's, like... Remember Lightning's, like, commanding officer from the previous game that we all thought was a fun guy?
Yeah.
There's a duplicate of him who is like a quiz guy who sucks. He sucks because his quiz sucks mechanically. I like him as a person. Nothing against him. Cool. That's about it. There's so much shit. I want to recommend that next week, since this week was pretty packed, as we noticed, I would recommend next week we cut it in half no matter what, because, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but there's just so many good side quests and shit. I would love it if we could cut it in half and then spend some time talking about all this extra shit.
Potentially. We'll have to see.
We'll have to play it by ear, but I just want to throw that idea out there because, man, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, for example, some of the side quests that we all had to do today, we didn't get to talk about because they're not technically important at all to the plot, but they are very interesting. All right, I'm going to skedaddle. Lovely speaking to all of y'all.
All of us are going to skedaddle. If you want to stick around and say your goodbye in the 15 seconds it's going to take me to say all my normal stuff. Yeah, so that will do it for the week. So if you like what you heard today, you can check us out on the web at www.rpgbook.club, where any and all donations that you give us help unlock more of this side story podcast that we do. We are currently trying to unlock Metal Gear Solid. As we mentioned earlier, they're really cool and really dense and really weird. So we'll be super excited to talk about the first game there. But for RPG Book Club LongCast, I've been Sam Allman.
I'm David Bernard Hauk.
And I'm Addie Grace Webbin.
Toodaloo, folks.
Goodbye, folks.
Bye.
Change the future and change the past.
Good game, good game, good game.
Save the cheerleader, save the world.
Exactly. I like this game so much, folks.